Hello folks, so in 1952 in Palomar Observatory there was 9 objects that was observed, and then half an hour later those objects disappeared. Now this is well known, but there'll be a few people that don't know about this, and today on News Nation there was an interview of a lady, Dr. Beatrice Villaroyal. She looks like an angry bird. I might clip the image of which angry bird I think she looks like. She speaks about these 9 objects, and I'm going to play this for you now. So take a look at this, people.
Like effect from gravitational lensing, you could expect maybe some kind of changes in all stars in that same field. However, we only see of these 9 stars, and all the other ones are unaffected.
So, take gravitational lensing out. What about, say, a supernova or something like that?
Well, it's extremely unlikely to have 9 supernovae happening there all.
Yeah, imagine that, just in that little short window, 9 massive supernovas happening. No, listen, I'm not going to jump ahead or anything like that, but it's aliens. It's fucking aliens, UFOs, spaceships, whatever they are. There was something there, and that's not the only thing. There's something else that happened that same night, which we're going to get into after this.
At the same time, and also they usually take months. It's not half an hour.
And you've already explained that it couldn't be a meteor or a comet, because if it was, you would get a streak in the exposure because it was moving. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So what are the other, is there any other explanation, natural explanation, that as good scientists we ought to be considering?
Well, we were thinking about, for example, we were thinking about supernovae. What else were we thinking about? I already forgot everything we were thinking about. But what we did was that we looked at, let's say, a phenomenon, and we looked at the typical rates. How frequently does this happen on the sky? And you can see that all these things like supernova and micro lensing events, all those are happening far more rare, and definitely not in such a small area of the sky. So we could just ignore all of that.
So let me be very clear in this. So what you see are 9 objects in one particular region of the night sky. It's not disparate all over the visible night sky. So it was 9 objects in one particular region. Are you able to isolate what area of space it was? Was it in orbit? Was it far out? Are you able to figure that out from the slides?
I have one image. And that's what's the problem with the VASCO project. We have one single image, so you can't say how far out it is. It could even be, in principle, somewhere inside the atmosphere, but very, very high up. It's just that we can't tell that from one single image. Imagine if you would have some 9 objects that would pop into existence.
Which we'll get into in a minute. It might, she said there, it could be in our atmosphere, which is interesting because something else happened that night on July the 19th, 1952. Stay tuned.
Distance high up inside the atmosphere. It could also look like that. So we need that's why we need exoprobe, where we can actually localize them and tell the distance.
So I'll get to exoprobe, but I first want to hear now. So we've ruled out all the possible natural explanations. You're talking about 9 transient objects that appeared on a slide in, I think, did you say 1950?
That was 12th of April, 1950.
1950. And they're not there in a slide half an hour later.
Exactly.
So
or maybe it was earlier, actually. And then we looked also 6 days later.
12th of April, that's not right.
And we looked 30 years later, and we looked at, we even took the world's largest telescope, the Gran Telescopio Canarias, which is
maybe it is right, I don't know, I'll have to double check that. But something happened July the 19th, same year.
10.4 meter telescopes, and we went super deep, and we looked at this place, and there was nothing there, and we said, okay, here we use this very big telescope. And then we looked also 6 days later, and we looked 30
objects that appeared on a slide in, I think, did you say 1950?
That was 12th of April, 1950.
1950. And they're not there in a slide half an hour later.
Exactly. Or maybe
So
it was earlier, actually. And
yeah,
then we looked also 6 days later, and we looked 30 years later, and we looked at, we even took the world's largest telescope, the Gran Telescopio Canarias, which is a 10.4-meter telescopes, and we went super deep and we looked at this place, and there was nothing there, and we said, okay, here we use this very big telescope, and there's nothing on the place.
and
So
what do we know about the time, the date of when this exposure happened, when these 9 objects appeared? Is there any significance in that date in 1950 at all?
we checked it. We didn't find anything special on the 12th of April, 1950.
So what was it, Beatrice?
I don't know. I wish I knew.
But can we assume that one potential plausible explanation is that whatever they were artificial? They
Yes,
were there. They were capable. Whatever they were there 1 minute when a slide was taken, and then half an hour later they weren't there when another slide was taken.
exactly. And if I can spin further on your thought, if I may, we have later we kept on working with like searching for new examples. For example, I was thinking about that one way how you can actually show that it's not plate defects is if you find several of them that are aligned on a line, because that would be something that comes also with a movement. And we wrote a paper, we published it in Acta Astronautica about how to do this search, and the referees were happy with the way how we suggested how one would search for it with the statistics. And then finally we made a search, and we actually found 2 examples that were statistically significant where you can see several along a line. So here is one image, and what you can see here is that you have 5 objects that are aligned along a narrow strip, as you can see here. And the probability to have this by chance is 1 in 10,000. It's a so-called 4.2 sigma statistical significance on this detection.
And what does
And
that
it
mean
happens.
for a bear with a very simple brain, Beatrice? What does that mean? What do
It's
we?
the chance to get 5.
So the reason I'm confused is I thought this was 1952, not 1950. I could have swore this was 1952. This happened. Round, very close to like within like a month of the Washington UFO incident. Could have swore this was 1952. I just, unless I've got something wrong in this, I don't know. It's only been uploaded today, so I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it was 1952.
Transients aligned on a line, or just 5 objects aligned on a line in such a image is 1 in 10,000. Is very small, and you can see this example here. And on top of
So
that,
could they be spacecraft? I mean, is
it
it
could be.
plausible? Is it
It's a
plausible to
possible
you that you might have?
explanation.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, what's behind all of?
I love the way he says it. Could it be spacecraft? You're probably, yeah, but Ross, just fucking say it. It's UFOs. 1 in 10,000 chance. It can't be anything else. It's got to be spaceships. It's got to be flying saucers. Those green motherfuckers with their 2-foot penises coming here in their crafts. That's what we've got. That's what we've got. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but she really does remind me of one of the Angry Birds. And I'm going to pop that image up on here at some point when I edit this. But yeah, I could have sworn this was 1952, and I'm going to double check that. But either way, it doesn't matter, because the Washington 90 happened in 1952, and that was July the 19th. Let me just have a look at something. 1952, Washington DC. From July the 12th to 29th, a series of unidentified flying objects were reported in Washington DC, and later became known as the Washington Flap. The Washington National Airport sightings, or the invasion of Washington, the most publicised sightings took place on consecutive weekends, July the 19th to the 20th, July the 26th to the 27th. UFO historian Curtis Peebles called the incident the climax of the 1952 UFO flap. Now, it goes into some other things here, but I want to know about, what's it called, Palomar Palomar observation. 9 objects. 9 weird transients from 1950 still unexplained. From 1950. Maybe it was 1950. Maybe I'm wrong. And I'm perfectly fine with being wrong. It's good to... So these were taken on April the 12th, 1950. Right, a red sensitive image of the same patch of sky taken in 1996. The 9 weird transients are seen in the 1950 image circled, but not in the later one. So yeah, that is weird. So I can make that bigger for you. So we can see them here, and they're not here. So 1950, 1996, we don't see them. Do you love a good mystery? Then you'll probably like this one. Something odd happened back in 1950 when astronomers noticed that 9 star-like point sources of light had simultaneously appeared in a photographic plate acquired at the Palomar Observatory in Southern California as part of the famous Palomar Sky Survey. That might or might not sound unusual, but none of those point sources were seen in the images taken just before the small patch of sky. Likewise, they didn't appear in images taken after. Either that remains true through today, even with images from current surveys that are much more sensitive to faint objects. So what were these 9 transient objects? Well, it's quite obvious what they were. They were aliens. They were aliens. That is all it can be. Aliens. What else could it be? Like, they disappeared within half an hour and they've not been seen ever since. And what, like 1996? Why should have mentioned that? So 1996 they had the objects that weren't there, and 1950 they were there. They can only be UFOs, and that's all it can be. And 1952 we had the UFOs over Washington, and that was July. I thought it was the same year. So I'm actually annoyed at myself for being wrong on that, but you know, that's life. At least I'm already better than Lou was on those Stephen Gray, because I admit when I'm wrong. Yeah, I was wrong. I thought it was the same year. It's not. I'm not going to block people for taking the piss out of me either, so feel free to take the piss out of me. Should have a sip of my beer. So I'm going to carry on playing a little bit of this a sec.
Of this is, the implication is that these are artificial objects of some kind, perhaps non-human spacecraft.
And to make it even better, it happens on a date, but we didn't know that because we posted it on archive first with an error in the table where I had the wrong date. I converted it wrongly. Now we have corrected it. Well, still not on archive, but we already know that the correct date is that it happened, our best example, on the 27th of July 1952, which to me, when we wrote the paper, was an obscure date. However, later my colleague date.
Non-human spacecraft.
And to make it even better, it happens on a date, but we didn't know that because we posted it on archive first with an error in the table where I had the wrong date. I converted it wrongly. Now we have corrected it. Well, still not on archive, but we already know that the correct date is that it happened, our best example, on the 27th of July 1952, which to me, when we wrote the paper, was an obscure date. However, later my colleague...
So I was right. It was 1952.
Colleague Enrique Solano found a beautiful example of 3 transients that, again, they were the brightest and most beautiful of all our examples, where you see 3 transients appearing and vanishing again within half an hour. So here you can see these 3 beautiful stars. You see it in one image, but you don't see it in the other. And this one happens on the 19th of July 1952. And that is when a friend of mine, David Altman...
Right, I was right. I was wrong on that, but I was right. Because, yes, now I remember, this image looks more familiar. So I was right. It was 1952. And it was close. Right, let's carry on. I'm excited. I've got a semi on.
Pointed out, hey, do you know what this date is? I said, no, I have no idea. Well, it's a very famous date. This Washington, D.C. UFO flap. I said, oh, really? So I went and looked at that. Wow, that's a coincidence. And
So
that is
can I? This is just such a precious piece of research. I love this. This is good science finding something potentially anomalous, which cannot be explained naturally. There's no prosaic explanation that explains what we're talking about here. So you've got two dates in July of 1952, one the week after the other. One's the 19th of July and the other's the 27th of July, correct?
yes, and I had never heard about the
Well, no, because it happens on the 19th as well. That's when it starts in Washington. So it happens on the 19th, and it happens a week later, and a week later after that as well. That is, you can verify that online. In fact, I'll do it now quickly if I can. There, the most publicised sightings took place on consecutive weekends, July the 19th to the 20th, and then July the 26th to the 27th.
Washington DC flap when we found these things. That's the best part.
And one of the greatest sightings in UFO history. It's one of the most recorded incidents in UFO history. Was the notorious, as you say, UFO flap in 1952. And it was when on two consecutive weekends, UFOs, apparent craft, certainly intelligently guided objects of some kind, were detected on multiple radar systems, military and civilian, over Washington. And it's funny because, everybody talks about why don't the aliens come and land on the White House lawn? In this case, they didn't land on the White House lawn, but they flew, allegedly, right across Washington, D.C.'s very highly protected.
So, let me go back here. I'm going to leave it there, right? This is just, I like to do my quick videos, I like to give people a little bit of things and then go and look at it themselves. So in 1952, there was objects that was seen, observed, and then they disappeared off the thing, which doesn't make any sense, right? It's got to be UFOs. It's got to be aliens, right? And then in 1952, the same night, there was things seen over Washington, then the following weekend over Washington as well. A big period between the 1950s and 1952, there was big things going on with the UFO phenomena. So I recommend people go and research stuff from that period. The link for this full interview will be in the description. Please drop a comment and let me know what you think. Please let me know if you think I'm wrong on anything, or if I've got anything wrong. I like feedback and stuff like that. I will get better. The microphone will get better. Things will get better as I'm learning linear. It's different. Like I said, it's different beast to TikTok. This is sort of different YouTube, so I'm getting used to it. But I was right. 1952, something did happen. But the 1950 was the other one, the one with the 9 objects. So the one with the 3, that was 1952 from what it looks like. Because I was angry with that, because I don't know if you could see it, but I was getting really frustrated watching the rest of it when I was said to you, I've got something that follows on from it, because I was like, hold on a minute, I must be fucking wrong here. But thankfully I wasn't. I was right. My research was okay. It's just that I got confused. You've got to hold your hand up and say, yes, I made a mistake, which is something Lou Elizondo won't do, and Stephen Gray won't do, and a lot of other people won't do, because they are so far up their arse grifting. They cannot just admit to being wrong. I will admit when I'm wrong, and I enjoy finding myself out sometimes. It's very interesting. So please, go on over, watch the full interview of this. Please like, subscribe, and follow me on here, on TikTok, on Facebook, wherever. UFOs around the world. I'm all over the place. I get where water doesn't. All you have to do is drop a little comment, whether it's a troll comment or not. They're all appreciated. Just help me out here. And always keep your eyes to the skies around the world, because UFOs are around the world. Good night, folks. See you on the next.